Yeah, I mean this fight really unfairly, I think, for a lot of people defines Prince Naseem Hamed. It was a fight that he was chasing for quite a long time, biggest fight of his career, the best name on his entire record. So you can see why people would define the accomplishments of Naseem Hamed just on this one fight. But I do think it's grossly unfair. I think if you look at what Hamed did going into, or for many years before this fight, quite frankly, he's one of the best fighters this country's ever produced. If not, and also very possibly the most exciting fighter this country has ever produced. And he deserves serious credit for that. But I do think as a consequence of how special he was and how exciting he was, how revered he was, that he was borderline paralytic drunk on himself, on his own punching power, on everything. He adored himself, and at that point in time, and it was his undoing. I think if you look at this fight from start to finish, you had one man who was very disciplined, didn't get carried away, had a game plan that he stuck to, versus a guy who just thought that he had the power to end it at any moment and was far too reliant on that power throughout. And whatever Emmanuel Stewart was trying to say to him in the corner, he wasn't listening to. It's easy to forget that the people just presumed this was a one-sided beatdown. And I've read reports that the scores just don't do justice to Barrera. But Hamed is in this fight through in certain periods. There's times where he's using his jab effectively. And this wasn't the first fight, let's not forget, where we were seeing Hamed look horrendous as he leapt in, seeing him look like a novice as he skyrocketed after his opponents and missed the target. The difference was, of course, in those other fights, he generally got there in the end. But he was nowhere near Barrera when he was loading up like that. And as a consequence, he looked terrible. It was his worst performance. And I spoke to Naseem about this, and it was about 4 years ago, I believe. And let me just read you what he said, because I really wanted to see how, if because it's you know it's famous now, the delay beforehand while they were arguing about gloves, and Naz needed extra time to warm up with the new gloves. And I asked him if he felt beforehand that Barrera, as he's making his way to the ring, if that was a danger, that he felt that he was going to lose that, if there was a danger in his mind. He said, absolutely not. In my heart of hearts, I felt I was going to win. Even though I was weak and I'd lost so much fluid and I knew it was going to be hard, I felt within me that if I hit anybody, I'm going to knock them out. I said to myself, are you telling me you're not going to hit this guy? And I hit him, but it wasn't like normal. Even then, I thought that I was going to throw one kind of shot and it would catch him and he'd go. But then the 12th round came along, and then there was only a few seconds left, and then I realised that I wasn't. I realised it was the first time in 21 years that I'd lost a fight. But even then, I mean, he then goes on, and you can read this if you're a subscriber. You can read this long, in-depth interview with Naseem on our website. And he looks back on it, and he still doesn't really feel that although he accepts he lost the decision, the fact that he wasn't knocked out means that he can live with it. He doesn't feel like necessarily that Barrera was the better man, the better fighter. And I must say that out of all the boxers that I've interviewed, particularly those that have retired, there are not many more comfortable in their own skin than Prince Naseem Hamed. Very, very little regret about that night. And I thought it was interesting as well, the post-fight interview after he'd lost this fight was when he was like, Larry Merchant was asking him, what he was going to do next. He was like, well, I want a rematch. Oh, so you want a rematch? I'm not saying I want, I'm saying I'm going to get a rematch. I've got a rematch clause. But then the next question I thought was telling, or the answer to it was telling. Okay, well, when would you like the rematch? Well, maybe at the end of the year. The desire, I think, at that point had left him. It had gone. And he wasn't the same when he came back and had that fight against Calvo a year later at all, was he? At all. But I still believe that Naseem Hamed had a tremendous, tremendous career.